You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. So imagine you've got a bucket of water and it's a lovely clear bucket of water. The water is pristine. And as you pick up the bucket of water full of this really pure, clear, beautiful water, you actually drop a bottle of ink that is in your pocket. And as the bottle of ink falls, it hits the side of the bucket and smashes. And all of the ink falls into the water and pollutes it. Now, a moment ago, you had this lovely, clear, pure bucket of water. And now it's contaminated with all of this ink that you've gone and dropped in it. What are you going to do? Now, obviously, you want to get back to the point where you've got just a bucket full of clean water again. But how do you get to that point? Well, there's two ways you could get to that point. The first way is you could try and remove the ink. Now, if you try and remove the ink, well, good luck with that, because that's going to be really, really difficult, isn't it? Like, how do you take the inky bits out of the water? Because it's all meshed in together now, it seems. So that's going to be really hard. But thankfully, there is another way. And rather than trying to take the bad stuff out, what you can do is add more of the good stuff. And so the best way to get the ink out and to get as close as possible as having a really nice bucket of water again is to add water. And keep on adding water. Keep on adding the thing that you do want. And eventually what will happen is that the amount of water will just dilute out all of the ink that used to be in there. And I like this metaphor because it's a good way of thinking about many different systems in life as well. That rather than always focusing on the problem, what we can do is focus on what it is that we want instead. We can focus on trying to add the good stuff rather than try and take the bad stuff away. Now, sometimes it does make sense, doesn't it, to take the bad stuff away? I mean, after all, that's why we flush a toilet. But there are other times where focusing on the problem isn't necessarily the best way or the only way of going about fixing things. And that's particularly the case in what I would refer to as limited systems. Now, the thing with problems is that they can get very knotty. They can get very stubborn. To try and solve or overcome a problem can be really, really difficult. And sometimes we don't even know why the problem is there. And so it's very easy sometimes to be defeated by problems, which is why it's nice to have this other way of going about things. So in this other way of going about things, we add more good stuff rather than try and take bad stuff away. And as I say, it's particularly useful when we find ourselves in limited systems, as I call them. So what do I mean by a limited system? Well, a limited system is something that doesn't expand. So a bucket, for instance, is only as big as the bucket. A box, for instance, is only as big as the box. There's only so much that I can put in a box. Now, when you've got a limited system like a box, then you can't make the box bigger. It's simply a case of, if you want to carry something else in that box, you're going to have to take something out. Now, the reason why I like limited systems is and why I like to focus on how to improve limited systems like a box, like a bucket, is because our lives, our days, are limited systems. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, you get 24 hours in a day. Time is that great equaliser, and there's nothing that you can do to give yourself a 25-hour day. So every single day that we're here is a limited system. And in limited systems, like the bucket, then by adding something, you are automatically taking away the bad thing, lessening the thing that you don't want. So let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say in my day, for instance, that I notice I'm spending a good portion of my day feeling really miserable. Well, if I simply convert even just a tiny bit of that time into feeling happier, then I automatically lose that amount of misery. It's not that I keep my misery, but I've got some happiness as well, because it's a limited system. It has boundaries. We've got 24 hours a day. So if I spend 8 hours feeling miserable, rather than try and solve the problem as such, I can add water to the ink. And so what I can do there is decide to spend, 5 minutes of that 8 hours doing something that actually fills me up in some way, that engages me, that makes me feel good. Whatever that happens to be. And now all of a sudden, I haven't got 5 minutes of good stuff, but I've still got the 8 hours of sadness. No, I've got 5 minutes of good stuff and 7 hours and 55 minutes of the bad stuff. You see, when you're in a limited system, and this is the joyous thing, simply by adding more of what you want, lessens, by definition, the amount of stuff that you don't want. So let me give you another example. The nutritionist Michael Greger, if I'm saying his name correctly, has discovered that human beings are really consistent in the amount of food we eat per day. Our calories will go up and down, but the amount of the weight amount of food, like so many pounds per day, we're very consistent day in, day out. And so if Michael Greger is right, then the amount in weight that we eat is also a limited system. And so we could kind of focus on not eating so much chips, or not eating so much chocolate, or not having so many burgers, or whatever it is. Or we could just add more of the good stuff. Because again, if that is a limited system, if we eat the same amount in weight each day, then it means that just by changing the balance and adding some more good stuff, it means less bad stuff will get eaten. Now, once you realise that time itself is a closed system, is a limited system in that way, then you realise that how we live our life can change by ignoring the problems and by focusing on just adding more of what we want. So when we find something in life that is going well, one of the things that we can do is focus in on how it's going well. Like, what did we do to create that little moment of going wellness? Because even if you can spot the tiniest chink of light and expand that, the very act of expanding it, because it's a limited system, will remove the amount of time being spent on something that is going less well. So let's say, for instance, I just do 5 minutes of walking. By definition, that means I get 5 minutes less of simply sitting down. 5 minutes of the good stuff automatically takes out 5 minutes of the stuff we want less of. And this is one of the reasons why tiny habits work. This is one of the reasons why we don't really need to be perfectionists. We don't need to go for that overarching, everything's perfect approach, because in a limited system, like each of our days is, then all we really need to do is to focus on expanding the stuff that is going well. And so when you think about what it is that you want in your days, whether it be more exercise, or whether it be eating better, or whether it be spending time in a way that is fulfilling, or you want more connection, whatever it is that you do want, notice where you've created it in life already. And then do more of that. Expand it. Because by the very act of expanding it, you'll be knocking out the stuff that is not going well for you. And so when you notice a problem in life and you think, wow, I want less of that, I really want less of that, well, ask yourself what it is that you want instead, and then notice where it has shown up. Even if it's not recently, notice how you created that something else. Because simply by expanding that, you will get less of the thing that you want. Now, of course, I'm not saying that you have to ignore the problems all the time, but you can see that in a limited system, often what we can do is simply focus on the good stuff and expand it. And by definition, the stuff we don't want gets taken away. So let's recap then. We started off by looking at that lovely bucket of water that got polluted by the ink. And we saw that in order to get closer back to a lovely bucket of water again, we have to add water rather than remove ink. And the reason why is because a bucket is a limited system. And in any limited system, by adding what we want, automatically lessens the thing that we don't want. And so we saw some examples, didn't we, where time is the classic limited system. We all get 24 hours a day. And so by just changing what happens in that day, by adding in the good stuff, like adding in the water into the bucket, we automatically take out the ink of life, the stuff that we want less of. And so even though our focus naturally falls upon the problem when we're experiencing the problem, the wonderful thing about time being a limited system is that anytime we've got something that we don't want, we can ask ourselves, what would I prefer instead? And then find that in our life either right now or in the past, and take that chink of light and expand it. Because every 5 minutes walking is automatically 5 minutes less where I'm sat down. And so whatever it is that you want in your life, and whatever it is that you notice you'd like less of, you can use this power that is inherent in a limited system, like a day, like a bucket, like a box, to simply expand what you want more of in order to get yourself a better life. So thanks for listening. If it's useful, please spread it on to somebody else so that they can benefit too. If you'd like to work with me directly, one-to-one, I'm Alun Parry, and you can find out more at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And it doesn't matter if you're not local, because I work online as well. And please subscribe to the podcast, because it's completely free and it means you'll never miss an episode again. So thanks for listening. I'll be back again tomorrow with another one.